Welcome to tonight's edition of Under the Bleachers. Chris Ransom, joined by William Yanish and Brandice Bell. And tonight we're going to be recapping some games. And then we'll be picking, then we'll be adjusting our playoff bracket. And then we'll be picking some games. I know that's a very bland intro. That's the premise for tonight. We'll start with my Buckeyes getting their butts kicked by Oregon. To be fair, it was only a 1-point loss, but still a loss. And Oregon's offense was dealing. I mean, Ohio State's defense, their edge rushers were having trouble against Oregon's offensive tackles. Denzel Burke and Jordan Hancock were having trouble in coverage against Tez Johnson and Evan Stewart. And Dylan Gabriel was able to manage this game well and do enough to get the win. Gabriel doesn't have the greatest arm. I know you've been critical of him on the Draft Utopia podcast, William, which is Saturdays at 10 a.m. But, Gabe, when he manages the game and he makes accurate throws, he can do enough to win a game with the right supporting cast. And that was the case on Saturday. And we'll break down Oregon later. We got 7 games in the pick segment for this week. So, yeah. But Ohio State's offense played well, but at the same time, they just couldn't do enough to beat Oregon. So Oregon moves up to number 2 in the polls as a result.
Yeah, that's one thing. I mean, I don't know. I didn't expect Oregon to, establish themselves that quickly in the Big Ten. I figured maybe next year with all the no money they got coming in, that kind of stuff. But of course, I also consider Dan Lanning, one of the 3 best coaches in college football, and I mean, even he proved that at the end of the game, when, they brought 12 guys out on the field, to get the penalty to, run an extra 4 seconds off the clock. It's just smart football. And Gabriel, he's definitely capable of that. I never doubted that, I was just from an NFL, perspective looking at him, but college, he is what he is, and he's doing it well, man. And it's definitely a thing, man. I don't think anybody else, really expected Ohio State to go down in this game, maybe so much. I mean, did you, Brandice?
No, not at all. I mean, I didn't think that they were going to just sweep Oregon, but I was very interested at halftime to see how it was going to play out.
Yeah, and just it definitely this whole season, I mean, that's what I've been talking about, the parody of it and what's happening. And I mean, it's first year of the college football playoff, and I mean, it's already showing out like it's gonna make for a hell of an end to the season, and there's also no reason to think, just looking from here on out, Oregon should go undefeated. I mean, looking at it, I mean, the only thing close to teams that they have to go up against to be any blip in the radar is Illinois. They've been ranked, for most season, in the 20s there, and they have Michigan. But I mean, other than that, Oregon should easily go undefeated.
I think Michigan on the road is really the only team that could upset them. But go ahead, Brandice.
I'm actually wondering if Ohio State's going to struggle with Nebraska. Never know.
Yeah, that's one thing too.
The only opponent I'm worried about right now. I know I should just focus on Nebraska and just try to win that game. That's that mentality the team needs to have. But at the same token, the only opponent I think that could beat Ohio State, because I don't see anybody going into Columbus and beating the Buckeyes with this team. Now, Penn State could beat Ohio State in a few weeks in Happy Valley. I know that game is going to be a huge game, and we'll have a thumbnail for that game whenever we preview it in a few weeks. Next week's thumbnail is probably going to be the Georgia-Texas recap. But, I mean, Ohio State, if they lose to Penn State, we're probably getting a Penn State-Oregon Big Ten championship. So that's all I'm going to say on that. What do you got is want to add to the Ole Miss LSU game? I'll start with you on that, Brandice, and then I'll get your thoughts on that, William.
Well, it's tough because I've really been kind of rooting secretly for Ole Miss this entire time. Just really kind of hoping that they, do something interesting just because I really love an underdog, and I've obviously been talking about this entire time. But you don't know, like, would you consider LSU the underdog? Because they've struggled this season in games that they shouldn't have struggled in. So I was actually pretty impressed by LSU this game. I thought that they played the kind of football that I remember LSU to play. So many NFL players have come out of LSU, particularly, DBs and things like that. And I knew that their defense eventually would be the defense that we've always known LSU's defense to be.
Oops.
Okay.
All right. Anyway, go. Oh, there she is.
You hear me? I'm sorry.
Yeah, we hear you perfectly.
Yeah,
Hey,
I
look,
thought high of Ole Miss because they came out really strong, and LSU obviously didn't. What'd you say?
We switched.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh,
If I turn my
okay.
camera,
I can barely hear you, William. Sorry. But yeah, I think that everybody, yeah, you're right, William. Everybody on this podcast was like, yeah, LSU, they're going to be fine. And I was like, I don't know. They hadn't been looking great in the past, a few years. But Ole Miss, I remember seeing them last year and being like, something's happening over there. And then they came out really strong. So I was glad to see LSU come back because I've always been an LSU fan. I'm always going to root for certain teams just because I've got kind of an affinity to certain coaches, and LSU has been one of those teams. But I wasn't as impressed with Ole Miss, and I think that this loss kind of might have really kicked them out of the playoffs. I don't really see them because they don't have a easy schedule coming up.
Yeah, but anyway, Garrett Nussmeier, he threw for 337 yards, 3 TDs, 2 INTs. He has a game-winning touchdown to Kieran Lacey. And this is a game on my original bracket that I had LSU winning, and it's one of those things. I always like Jackson Dart, but I don't know. There's something.
LSU's offensive line was incredible in this game because Ole Miss came in 24 sacks, led the SEC, and Will Campbell did his thing, kept them from sacking his quarterback Nussmeier. And there's a reason why Will Campbell's my number 1 player for the 2025 NFL draft. But yeah, what are your closing thoughts on the games this week before we get to the surprise team segment for this week's show? Pick a surprise team that's undefeated that will make the playoff.
Oh, I didn't have too much else to add to that, but was that undefeated was supposed to be part of it? Mine wasn't kind of undefeated yet, but we can definitely move on to.
It doesn't have to be an undefeated team, just a surprise team that can make the playoff. I think most of the picture has taken place. I really don't see a surprise team, but I will try to make a case for Indiana. Indiana's undefeated. I don't think they're going to get in, but let's say hypothetically Penn State loses to Ohio State, and Indiana actually beats Ohio State. And in that scenario, Indiana would be playing Oregon for the Big Ten title. I don't think they'd win, but would a 1-loss Indiana team that beat Ohio State head-to-head get in over a 2-loss Ohio State team or a 1-loss Penn State team? That remains to be the question. I think Penn State probably would get in over Indiana, so if they bring a third team in, you'd have to ask yourself, 1-loss Indiana or 2-loss Ohio State. That's a really tough decision for the committee to make for that 10-11 spot in the playoff. And this is me just trying. They have Curtis Rourke. They have a receiver we talked about in that played at James Madison that we talked about for last year's NFL draft or this year's NFL draft. James Madison transfer. This is me objectively trying to make a case for Indiana to be that team. I know the team you were thinking of, William, was Texas Tech. And Indiana's receiver, Elijah Surratt, had 1,000 yards at James Madison. He's on pace to do that this year. So if Curtis Rourke and Elijah Surratt continue to play at the level they're playing at, maybe Indiana is the team that makes the playoff. I have to pick somebody. I don't know who else to pick that's a surprise team because I think most of the favorites are that we talked about already, whether it's Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, or some of the 1-loss teams like LSU, Georgia, Texas. They're probably going to get in. But if I have to make a case for a surprise team, I'll make a surprise case for Indiana. William, I know you had a surprise case for Texas Tech, so I'm going to let you get into that, and then we'll make our picks for the games.
Yeah, and when I first started thinking about this, I was going to do LSU. That's what I told Brandice, and I really started thinking about it. I wanted to do something that maybe somebody wasn't really talking about, but had a shot to get in there with some kind of way to get noticed, that no one else is talking about. And I decided to pick Texas Tech. Right now they're ranked number 29 nationally. They're 5-1. They've got a good young quarterback, Baron Morton. They've got Taj Brooks, a bowling ball for a running back. He's not much involved in the passing game so much. The thing is, their opportunity comes when they play this other surprise team, Iowa State, and that is the only thing that I'm counting for them to get noticed is to go in and win that game. And then, people are going to start saying, hey, these guys have actually, had a couple wins. They've been talking about this, They still have Baylor, TCU, Iowa State, Colorado, and Oklahoma State. But Oklahoma State's been a disappointment. Colorado's been a surprise, but I don't think they can beat Texas Tech. And, it kind of counts on them getting into the Big 12 championship game. And that's likely going to be against BYU because, they're undefeated right there and they don't have anything left on their schedule to close out.
They got to play Utah, but Utah's at 2 losses, I believe, William, after losing to Arizona State. Yeah. Utah's already at 2 conference losses. So even if Utah hands BYU their only loss, I still think BYU would get in over Utah unless another 1-loss Big 12 team beats BYU head to head.
Yeah. And that's the thing right there is, there are just like 2 things that have to happen for this team to get in there. And I'd like to see it happen. Like I said, I like Baron Morton as a prospect. He's having a career year, he's finally blossoming, but, so that's my argument. I think they can make the playoffs and I think they can get in the Big 12 championship game. And that's where the Big 12 is going to be decided. But,
Oklahoma State's winless in the Big 12. Utah and Oklahoma State were our preseason picks for this conference, but both of them have struggled in the Big 12. And really, you look at the 1-loss teams, BYU, Iowa State, and Texas Tech are undefeated in conference play. So those 3 are the prime contenders. But in order for BYU not to get in, somebody like Colorado, Cincinnati, or West Virginia or Arizona State would have to beat BYU head to head. And I'm not sure that's going to happen.
So, who did you pick, Brandice?
I'm surprised that none of you are thinking about Nebraska. I think I've got my non-power 4 team as Boise State still. And I think, I don't know. At this point, there's a lot of guesses because everything that I've guessed has just been wrong. So I've just been going towards a totally different thing. And what I've been looking at is the teams that are able to beat opponents that they weren't supposed to beat. Those teams you got to keep looking at. And I think Nebraska could actually make it. Who else have I been looking at? It's tough with the SEC because there's a lot of teams that have only got one loss, but I don't know if those teams have a strong enough schedule to sneak in. I think Iowa State is probably, in my mind, going to beat the Big 12. I think they're going to be that Big 12 conference winner. But I don't know. Kansas State could also. It's really just a matter of how the rest of the schedule plays out. And I know what happens a lot of times with these undefeated teams is that they get down the stretch and they start playing these teams that they just are supposed to beat handedly, and they kind of start resting on their laurels. And then some team out of nowhere ends up beating them and just ruins their, perfect record. So I don't actually think we're going to have, obviously, with Georgia and Alabama, a bunch of teams at the top that are undefeated. It may be 2.
I think Arizona State's another team to watch because they play Kansas State on the road and they host BYU near the end of the year. They only have one loss in conference play. So if we're looking at a third team that could play spoiler in the Big 12, it could be Arizona State. They did beat Utah head-to-head, so I think that does help them out a little bit. But are they a contender? Sure. No, but they're a team on the radar for sure.
Well, there's only 11 undefeated teams left overall, and got Texas, Oregon, Penn State, Miami, Iowa State, Indiana, BYU, Pittsburgh, Army, Navy, and Liberty.
Yeah, I put those 11 in my top 11, and I put Ohio State at 12. Obviously, it's not going to be like that, but until the first playoff bracket comes out in November, that's going to be the bracket until those unbeatens lose.
Yep.
I mean, that's the only fair way to do it until we see what the official bracket experts at ESPN have to say when the November brackets come out. All right, I'm going to mention some winners here. We got 7 games for this week that we're going to preview, and then we'll end the show. But let's start with Oregon, Purdue. 2 Friday night games. We got Oregon, Purdue, Oklahoma State, BYU. I am taking the Oregon Ducks. They're going to continue to win. Purdue's the worst Big Ten team. They lost Nick Thornton, their edge rusher, to Texas A&M. So I think the Oregon Ducks handled business against Purdue.
So do I.
No, I'm just kidding. I was going to be like, no. Yeah, okay, obviously. It's happening.
The next game is Oklahoma State versus BYU. Screw it. I'm going to take Oklahoma State in an upset just because Brandice has inspired me to pick an upset. And I honestly think the Cowboys can win this game. They've got Brennan Presley at receiver. They've got Ole Gordon. They've got some weapons. They just haven't stepped up yet. Maybe this is the night they step up. I'm going to take Oklahoma State, but I'll probably be wrong on this game.
Yeah, no, I'm not taking Oklahoma State.
They're winless in conference play. I don't blame you.
They were supposed to be something, more, but they're at 500, dude. So yeah, no.
I do think though there gets to a point where these players are just like, fuck it. Our seasons are fucked. Like, let's just go out there, balls to the wall, and those games they win that one game, and then the players on that team, whether they make it pro or not, that is the story that they tell their grandkids forever.
The team with nothing to lose is the more dangerous team. Just look at the Giants when they beat the Patriots in Super Bowl 42 when they were 18-0. The Giants had nothing to lose, and they won that Super Bowl. So, yeah, I mean, that team with nothing to lose is a dangerous team, and right now Oklahoma State's winless in conference play. They've got nothing to lose, so I think they play spoiler. I'll probably be wrong on this, but I am taking Oklahoma State for shock value. All right, we get to the Saturday slate of games. We start with the ranked matchup, Michigan and Illinois. I'm going to take the Wolverines here. and I hate to do this as an Ohio State fan, but I think Michigan's going to find a way to beat Illinois on the road. Illinois is a good team. They beat Nebraska on the road. I really respect what they've done as a program, but I just think Michigan's going to win this game. It's just a gut feeling.
Yeah, I'm going to take Illinois. I mean, who had Michigan, missing the college football playoffs before November? This guy. Well, anyway, maybe not before November, but I'll definitely take Illinois. I like Luke Altmaier. He has shown a little bit of potential, and yeah, I'll definitely take them. Oh, the one thing I was going to throw in there was Altmaier.
I'm going to go Illinois.
The one shocking stat that I saw was that Altmaier has taken 19 sacks over this season already. I mean, that's right up there with Shedeur, and that is one thing where they might actually get him, and they could do that, but yeah, I still think Illinois.
Yeah, the next game on Williams' list is Georgia, Texas, but I think we should save that game for last since it's the most exciting game of the week. So I'm going to skip to the next game, which is Nebraska, Indiana. The Hoosiers are the home team. Curtis Rourke and Surratt, I think they do their thing, and they win a nail-biter 28-27. I think Raiola has a good game as well, but the Hoosiers do a little bit more to stay undefeated in a barn burner in Indiana.
Yeah, I definitely can see, I mean, Indiana's doing everything they can, and, they got Mike Shanahan as an offensive coordinator, and his quarterback's got 14 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He's only taken 5 sacks this whole season, and I mean, Nebraska, they should try to increase that number. And I mean, but I mean, Raiola's been doing a bit, but 9 touchdowns and to 3 interceptions. It's more of a rushing team so far. He's still a young kid. He probably won't really blossom until next year. or however you want to put that. So I definitely take Indiana in this one, and I definitely like that too. I mean, their quarterback Curtis Rourke, he has 4 multiple touchdown games, and both of those interceptions were in the same game versus Maryland, and I mean, other than that, he's been a real good in that pocket up there. So,
all right, the next game features Alabama and Tennessee. SEC matchup. I am taking the Vols. I don't think too highly of Alabama or Tennessee. And one of the reasons I picked Alabama to miss the playoff is because I felt like there were a few games on their teams that could play spoiler. We already saw what Vanderbilt could do. I mean, South Carolina only lost by 2 points to Alabama. I like the Vols. Neyland Stadium's a really tough environment to play in. But Jalen Milroe and Nico Imaleva are both in funks right now. This game is really going to come down to which quarterback can get out of a funk for their team. So, give me the Vols.
Yeah, and I mean, this is something I'm going to take Alabama every time in this one. I like Tennessee. I like the quarterback, but I mean, after the loss to Vanderbilt, I mean, that's something. And a 2-point win over South Carolina. I mean, if they don't win this game, they're going to be calling for DeBar's scalp. And I think they have to come out there and win it. To Tennessee, and I believe that he hasn't blossomed as a passer yet either. That's a complete running team, and that's just how it is. But I mean, yeah, after seeing the Vanderbilt loss or something like that, because Kentucky comes in and was playing spoiler and almost beat Georgia and and then beat that other and then Vanderbilt comes in and beats Kentucky. So maybe we should have seen that coming. I don't know, but yeah, I'll definitely take Alabama in this one.
Brandice, who do you like? This is a tough game to pick. if you'd rather pick Miami, Louisville first, then come back to this one, I don't blame you.
Is her screen frozen?
I don't know. Her screen might be frozen because I can't hear. Yeah, I can't. The screen's not moving.
Huh. All right.
I'm going
I
to
guess
take
let's continue.
Louisville to beat Miami. I had Louisville as the only team to beat the Miami Hurricanes back in the preseason. So I'm going to take Louisville as the upset here. Miami could end up winning this game, but if they do, it's because the refs bailed them out for the third time in 4 weeks. Virginia Tech ending. We had the Cal ending. So, yeah. Okay,
Sorry,
Brandice.
I had some weird connection issues. As much as I would love to see Alabama lose, I can't. Like, I want them to lose so badly. Like, it's insane. But I think that it's so much riding on Kalen DeBoer to like not lose. He's gonna figure it out. And I think even though you can see you have seen some of the chinks in oh my God, quarterback. Give me a name, please. Sorry. Brain is conked out.
Milroe or
Milrose.
Milrose, Alabama. Okay.
Milrose Armor. I mean, I'm still confused as to how Vanderbilt bested them. I don't know if you guys saw that, like, they played the video of Saban saying that, like, Vanderbilt is the only place in the SEC where you're, like, guaranteed to win on the big screen at the stadium. I wish I was there. So, I mean, I don't think you have – it was a classic, like, so classic. But I don't think they're going to be able to – he knows that if they lose 2 games, he could possibly be out of a job. That's just how it works in the SEC. They're going to figure out a way to win, even if it means playing Milroe a little bit smarter. I don't know if you guys noticed, but they've been running the hell out of that kid, which, you know, isn't really helping him much because everyone knows that he can run. To get to the NFL nowadays, you have to be able to do both well. And he's got an arm, but you know, everyone's got an arm nowadays. So it's just a matter of, are you accurate? Do you know when to throw? Are you making the right read progressions? And we'll find out, because I think this is going to be a difficult game for them to come out of with a W, but I do think they will win.
All right.
I hate to say that.
I took Louisville over Miami. William, Brandice, what do you have to say about that game? And then we'll get to Georgia and Texas.
Well, we were just talking about, you know, Milroe and, you know, Milroe and Ward are, thing is, Ward is a more, you know, developed player. They are both on another speed or on another, you know, plane when it comes to speed on the field. You know, I mean, watching Cam Ward is like watching Hammy off of Over the Hedge when he drinks that energy drink. And I mean, he's just walking along and everything's in slow motion. And that is Cam Ward. When it comes to watching him from the pocket, I mean, he's just on a different plane. I mean, he moves, and then, you know, the defense reacts to him, and I mean, he's already, you know, moving again. But he's thrown for 20 touchdowns, you know, running another 3, you know, and I think that it's just one of those things that it's going to come down to, and there's not really a way to stop Cam Ward, you know, at this, you know, part in his career. And so I don't see any, I mean, it's just one of those things, and I'll take Miami all day with that.
Yeah, I've got Miami. I mean, it's, of all the upsets, I don't know. It's Miami. I just don't see this being the upset for them. I mean, if you even want to call it an upset, I guess it would be.
This is literally the toughest game on Miami's schedule, and it's a road game. If they win this game, I think they're going undefeated until the ACC title, at least.
I was looking at that that there's no reason that they shouldn't go undefeated. And I mean, it's going to come down to Ward and the Heisman Trophy and Milroe, and between them, well, outside of Gianti, I'm just talking about as a quarterback, and.
All right, can we get to the Georgia-Texas game?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, Georgia-Texas is the game of the week. Hook 'em horns. You're beating Georgia. You're getting another win, and Georgia's going to be at 2 losses. I know, Brandice. I think I pissed off Brandice. That wasn't my intention, but I think Texas is going to remain undefeated after this week.
Yeah. Texas right now, if they win this, they're going to cement themselves as the number 1 team in the country. I mean, what happens if Georgia loses here, though? I mean, that it's one of those things that 2 losses, and I mean, that's just not good. I don't know where Georgia's going to go after that, because it's going to be shock value. It's going to be everything else, and this is a must-win game. And I see Kirby Smart, taking this game as a must-win, and he has to absolutely step out there, leave his balls on the field, and freaking win this game, because otherwise, I mean, what's going to happen? And I will pick Georgia to win because they've got nothing else to lose.
Yeah. And it's going to be an exciting contest between Beck and Quinn Ewers, the quarterbacks. But go ahead, Brandice.
Oh, did she freeze up again?
And the audio decides to freeze up the second she's about ready to make a rant.
Sorry, I don't know what's going on with my internet, but I think this game's going to come down to 2 people, Glenn Schumann and Mike Bobo. They've got to figure it out, because there have been so.
Are those the coordinators on Georgia? I'm pretty sure they are, but
yeah, I think so. She's definitely having some technical issues. Well, that was one thing that I forgot to add with, talking about Quinn Ewers, that he is back, and,
yeah.
He comes back in and tosses 199, a touchdown and an interception.
It is his first game back from an injury, so pressure is going to be on. I don't know if he'll be 100%, but he is going to play.
Yeah, and that's another thing too. I mean, with all of that, but I mean, if Texas wins, I mean, it's going to be, I don't know, it'll definitely put a stamp on this season for what's happening in this. So
we'll give Brandice a minute to share her closing thoughts. But yeah, me and William, we pretty much shared our thoughts for this week. If Brandice wants to share her closing thoughts on this game, she can. And if she doesn't, we'll just end the stream. I mean, all right, Brandice, you got any closing thoughts on this game and just for this week's games in general?
Yeah, I'm going to have to be quick, because apparently, the ghost of Nick Saban is fucking with my internet. Yeah, I think that this is going to be a tough game. But the DC and the OC, Georgia's DC and OC, have got to figure it out. I'm not exactly sure what is going on with the play calling. It's been atrocious lately, especially in the red zone. They've got to figure that out. They've got to figure out how to help, this kid whose name is literally fleeing my brain. Help me. Carson Beck.
Carson Beck.
Figure out what in the world. I don't know if I think that there might be something going on with his personal life. Like maybe he's got some kind of relationship issues. Sometimes that happens mid-season, and then the quarterbacks start being weird and weird things start happening. We probably need to look into that, because it's giving something along those lines. Either way it goes, I think the coaches have got to figure out a way to make it so that his reads are simpler. The progressions that he's been going through have been struggling at best. And the amount of interceptions he's been throwing lately is kind of reflecting that. Also defensively, not sure what's going on with Malachi Starks. Like, just not sure. I think he should be benched at this point. I think just bench him. You know, if he starts fucking up like quarter one, bench him, because we cannot afford to lose this game. We lose this game, we're clearly out of the playoffs.
Maybe the edibles haven't wore off.
Maybe it's a bad batch.
Bad batch.
All right, so that'll do it for this week's edition. We'll have a recap on Carson Beck, Quinn Ewers, and how effective or ineffective Malachi Starks is in coverage on next week's edition.